There we go. So, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources Virtual Job Spotlight. So I'm Lynn April from CESA 8, and joining me is Allison Bowie from NWTC, and these are also sponsored by CESA 7, the Ahnapee Youth Apprenticeship Consortium, UWGB, and Inspire Northeast Wisconsin. So we have 4 career speakers this morning who are going to be talking to us about different careers in the field of agriculture, food, and natural resources. So joining us are Kyle Much, who is an agronomist with Knutson Crop Consulting, Matt Graham, who is a forester with Washburn County, Leanna Streckenbach, who is a veterinarian with Critter Care Animal Clinic in Sheboygan, and Christine Clementson, who is an instructor with the Vet Tech program at FVTC. And we quick go to the waiting room and admit, there we go. So just a reminder that our next career speakers on the 20th include an arborist, agribusiness seed sales, a county ag agent, and a family farm representative. So we'll be hearing from them on the 20th from 10 to 11. Just a reminder of our norms if you're joining us for the first time. The meeting is being recorded and will be rebroadcast through Inspire Northeast Wisconsin and our websites. All participants are muted and their video capabilities are turned off, but we absolutely will want to hear from you through the chat later. Only the presenters, actually, I will be sharing the screen and you'll be able to see the presenters on the side in the snapshot on the side. So all of their slides will be presented through my screen. If you do leave the meeting, I will try to keep an eye, and I've been trying to keep an eye on who is in the waiting room, but you may not be able to get back in, so just so you know that. And we absolutely do want to hear from our students and teachers who may be joining us today through the chat. So if you have any questions, absolutely let us know. And Allison will be manning that chat and reading those questions to us as we get done with each speaker. And we don't anticipate needing to do this, but we do have the ability to remove anyone from the meeting if they are distracting. So our speakers today, starting us off, is Kyle Much, an agronomist with Knutson Crop Consulting. So Kyle, take it away.
Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Kyle Much. Like Lynn said, I have been working for Knutson Crop Consulting for about 9 years. We're based out of Appleton, Wisconsin. Yes, as this picture shows right here, we do get to have some fun on some four-wheelers. I am an associate at Knutson Crop Consulting, and this year we'll be buying into the company. I will be owning the company 100% by 2022, so less than a year now. Right now, full-time is just my boss and I. His wife does the billing and secretary work. We usually hire between 1 and 2 summer interns. They are usually high school age or college age kids. Part of my growing up, I went to Fox River Lutheran High School in Appleton, Wisconsin. From there, I went to University of Wisconsin River Falls in River Falls, Wisconsin. I graduated from River Falls in the spring of 2012. I got a Bachelor of Science degree in Crops and Soils Science with a crops emphasis. The reason I went to River Falls was because I was interested in agriculture after being a summer intern for Paul. When I was going to be a sophomore in high school, I started working as an intern, working only 2 days a week to see if I liked this job or not. The following 5 summers, I worked for Knutson Crop Consulting full-time, 5 days a week, from when school got let out until the end of August. I took 1 summer off working from Paul and worked at Precision Ag, which is a part of Countryside Cooperative in Ellsworth, Wisconsin. There I was a custom applicator, spraying fields, and also a crop scout. After graduation, Paul offered me a full-time job, which I accepted. As you can tell, I am now a CCA, which is a certified crop advisor, which allows me to sign off my own nutrient management plans. So what does a crop consultant like me do? Wintertime, I attend educational events. There's actually an educational event going on right now this whole week. That helps me get credits to keep my CCA. I meet with my clients in the wintertime. We discuss what crop is going into each field. Corn, alfalfa, soybeans, wheat, oats, barley, and sorghum are the different crops we normally deal with. We discuss what variety of each crop is going to go into the field. We find out where manure went and what types of tillage got done in the fall. We do work with cash grain guys and dairy farmers. We use this information to write a nutrient management plan. This tells what each field, each client is farming, how much manure and commercial fertilizer went on each field, what type of tillage is done for each field. We look at the soil loss to make sure that we are still keeping it below the T, so that that's your tolerable soil loss, so that we can keep the field productive. We put in what type of crop is going to be grown. The plans are handed into the county, and some plans are handed into the DNR also. We work with farms that are 50 cows up to 2,500 cows, and 100 acres of land up to 5,000 acres of land. And we also in the wintertime figure out what kind of chemicals we are going to spray in the upcoming year. In the springtime, next slide please, we start soil sampling. So as this picture shows, we have an ATV that has an iPad on it with GPS location, the one arrow showing the iPad. The GPS is actually located below the iPad. We have our bucket for collecting the soil, and the last arrow, bottom arrow, showing a soil probe. We take one sample per 5 acres every 4 years. Each sample is made up of 8 to 10 soil probes or soil cores. Each location is marked for soil testing again in 4 years. Next slide, please. Some clients do variable rate fertilizer. That is, we go out there and we spread some parts of the field, and other parts of the field we don't get anything. We VRT right now lime, potash, and phosphorus. In order to do VRT though, we instead of doing a 5 acre grid, we go down to 2.5 acre grid. This will help build up the areas of the field that are low in the nutrients so the crop can grow at the maximum for the highest yield. So what this picture is showing is we are doing some variable rate potash on some soybeans. The white areas are receiving no nutrients at all, no potash. The green areas are receiving 100 pounds of potash. The little yellow areas are pretty much transition areas. They're getting 150, and then the red areas are lower testing potassium areas in the field, and they are getting 200 pounds, which the circles are showing. So in the spring, we start the weekly route going on each farm once a week on the same day of the week. Next slide, please. In the early spring, we also look at alfalfa and winter wheat to see if there's anything winter killed. If there is winter kill in the field, then we decide if we want to keep the field. If it's not too bad, if it's really bad, we end up going back and meeting with the client and redoing the whole plan we did in the wintertime, which is a lot of fun. So what this picture is showing is I dug up some alfalfa roots, and you break them apart, and as long as the center is still white, that means that the plant is healthy and growing. Once they get brown or dark colored, that means the alfalfa plant is probably going to grow a little bit and then die, and there won't be any yield off that field. So then we end up putting usually that field to corn. In the late spring / summer, we help clients with planter depth set up for correct planting depth. We take stand counts of crops to make sure that we have the proper amount of plants per acre. We line up fields to be sprayed. We sweep alfalfa after each cutting to look for insects such as potato leafhoppers and pea aphids. Next slide, please. We look at soybeans for soybean aphids. Threshold is 250 pound aphids per plant. What this picture is showing is the underside of a soybean leaf. That's where you have those little tiny soybean aphids that are there. There's roughly 6 or 7 of them there. When you start counting up to 250, it becomes really fun. We monitor crops for disease and insects. If diseases are favorable, then we may decide to spray a fungicide. We take pre-sidedress nitrate samples for corn at knee high to see how much nitrogen is in the soil, and we adjust our second application of nitrogen based off of those tests, so we can keep the corn crop growing and get the highest yield as possible. Next slide, please. When corn is tasseling, we take tissue tests. So we go out throughout the whole field and we take random plants right below the corn cob and we rip that leaf off. We gather 25 to 30 leaves, so it's 25 to 30 plants. We get them analyzed and it gives us nutrients as to what the plant is lacking or not lacking. We use this information to better spread nutrients the following year, since it's too late to do anything to correct anything that year. What this picture is showing is a cornfield, or actually a soybean field. Yes, soybeans actually need nitrogen. They make their own nitrogen though, which is nice. The soybean is low in potassium, or is responsive in potassium. So that means if we threw out a little bit more potassium, it would actually help out. It needs more sulfur, which is yes. Like I said, with these things, it's really nice having these kind of reports because then you can show the farmer that, hey, we probably should have spread more fertilizer and spent that extra $10 to probably get a couple more bushel gain off of that. In the fall, we soil sample, just like we do in the springtime. We sample anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 samples a year between the spring and fall. So we do stay pretty busy. In the fall, we start taking corn and we cut it off about 10 inches off the ground and we put it through our chipper. We check the corn moistures. Most farms chop corn at 65% moisture so that it's at the proper nutrient value so that we can get the most milk per ton. We also, next slide please, we also check the grain moisture of corn and soybeans as to when to combine. We'll take cobs like which picture is showing and we'll count the number of kernels around, the number of kernels lawn, and take the population and show what's going on to see a yield projection for how much yield potential we have. We advise clients as to where to put manure in the fall, make some preliminary budgets for clients who are cropping for the next year. High school classes to take, computer classes, so you know how to work with SNAP Plus and soil sampling programs to make BRT. Chemistry, need to know how to different nutrients act in the soil. Biology, know how the plants grow and what causes diseases in plants. Math, geometry, algebra are very important. We work with those every day doing math. English classes, we do write some papers, and with our nutrient management plans, you want to make sure you have proper grammar in the nutrient management plan. Communication classes, you need to be able to communicate to co-ops, clients, salespeople, DNR, county staff, as extension agents or NRCS people. What I encourage you to do is try and get an internship into a job that interests you so you can see if you want to make your career fair based off of that internship. When I was in college, I took advantage of being in Crops and Soils Club. We went to different states once every fall and spring to see the different farming practices around. Opened my eyes up to see the different farming practices outside of Wisconsin, which was really great to see. Skills we are looking for in an intern: willingness to learn, able to show up Monday through Friday and work whatever hours we need them to. Sometimes we work 60 hours in a week in those 5 days, and we work through whatever the weather throws at us, whether it's hot or cold. If it's raining, we'll work a little bit, but if there's lightning, we stay in the truck. Being able to communicate every once in a while to a client when you get to the farm before I do, ask questions when not sure about something, and being able to be confident in the work so you can report back to my boss or I. And that is what I do.
Awesome. So, so already as a high school student, you started interning during the summer. So how did you even decide, hey, I'm going to go talk to this guy who does crop consulting and see what this is all about?
My mom actually is friends with Paul's wife, so that's how I got involved with it. And I've worked on a lot of dairy farms in my years in high school, so I enjoyed ag to begin with, and just brought me into trying it out and see if I like this or not.
Awesome. Allison, do we have any questions?
There is one question, and I I'm not certain the full context, but the question states, is that the same with other plants? And it was around when you were talking about alfalfa.
So I'm wondering.
The root part. Is that the same with, when the picture of the alfalfa and the roots? So do you do that with other plants?
We go around to all alfalfa fields and check out the roots, see if the field's going to grow or not. We don't do that with corn or soybeans because they are planted only one time a year, so it's going to grow unless you get a frost. Then you will have kill some soybeans. But yeah, we just do that in alfalfa fields.
Great.
And my question was, and I did get the opportunity to spend a day with Kyle walking the fields. It was really fun. When you are looking for like those soybean aphids and you have so many per plant before you have to start spraying, you showed just the back of one leaf. How do you determine how many aphids are on that whole plant, for example?
We go to 10 different areas in the field and we do a thing called speed counting. So you kind of count up to like 25 and you get a visual as to what 25 little pea aphids look like. And then you take the rest of the plant, you look at it and you make it so that when you get up to 250 average per plant, that's when you decide you gotta start to spray and make it economical to help the farmer out by not having that insect do damage on that soybean plant.
Got it. And yeah, great recommendations for classes to take and skills that you need. So very, very complete information about your area. So thanks a lot, Kyle.
No problem.
All right. Next up, we have Matt Graham, who is a forester in Washburn County, and he's going to tell us what he does every day as a forester. So, Matt.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lynn, for having me on. My name is Matt Graham. I'm a forestry technician for Washburn County. It's a lot of the same job responsibilities as a forester, but it's more of the equipment operation side of things. So our department manages 154,000 acres of county forest land. And then within that, we have about 200 miles of ATV and snowmobile trails. And then we also manage and operate 4 different county campground park systems. So it's a lot of the recreational side and then also the forestry timber too. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little background on me. I got my Bachelor of Science degree in Conservation and Environmental Sciences at UW River Falls. I was also in the Army National Guard for 7 years as a mechanic. I had 1 deployment to Afghanistan. And then I also, growing up, I worked on my parents' hobby farm. There I acquired a lot of skills running tractors, chainsaws, and power tools. And then also, while I was in the UW system, I volunteered for some different programs that was offered through the DNR and local government for tree planting or whatever work they needed. The next slide, please. So the day-to-day operations for us, they vary a lot and are dictated by the weather. So in the springtime, we're usually out in the woods a lot because there's lower snow depths, and then also the bugs aren't as bad, so it's a lot more enjoyable to be out in the woods and not getting eaten alive by mosquitoes and flies. So we're out usually marking timber is what we call it. So we're out there determining which trees are going to be cut by the loggers. And then also during that time, we do a lot of tree planting contracts, and we just facilitate that with whoever we contract out with planting trees. And in the springtime, this is our fire season, and we work in partnership with the Wisconsin DNR with fighting fires during this time. So I am one of the dozer operators for the state, and so that takes up that time of the year. And then once Next slide, please. Once things start to green up, the fire season ends, that transitions us into building and maintaining ATV and snowmobile trails. So I'm usually on the grader, the dozer, or the skid steer, making new trails or upgrading them with our equipment, and then just making sure they're all clear for four-wheelers if there's any trees that fall across them. And also during this time, this is more so performed by our natural resources technician, but we maintain and operate 4 different campground systems through the county. So that takes up majority of the summer with mowing operations, sanitation, and just meeting and greeting campers that come and go. Next slide, please. And then into the fall, we go back into marking and doing a lot of our timber operations again, that with snow depths being lower and then bugs not being as bad too, that's why we're out in the woods. So you can see the left picture where that's a prism that we use, and that breaks the plane of the tree, and we use that for measuring the amount of trees that are within a plot, and that determines whether a forest stand is ready to be cut or not. So it's just showing you guys kind of some of the tools that we use. And in the picture far right with the dozer, there's a root rake on that. Depending on how good of an acorn crop we had in the summer, we use that going through the woods, and scarifies the soil, acts kind of like a tractor plow, and it creates a furrow for the acorns to fall in, and it creates a good seed to soil contact. And so it just helps promote oak regeneration. And then just with our job, it varies so much on the day-to-day. That's just a picture of my coworker. We had a culvert that got plugged up with debris from a beaver dam. So just showing you guys how much things change from day to day. And then in the fall too, we do a lot of mowing for fire lanes that we maintain. That's part of that 200 miles that is within the county. And that just is part of the state recommendation for helping fighting fires. So we have a breakable surface that the fire can't go across. And then next slide, please. In the winter time, this consists a lot of equipment maintenance. Like I was saying, we have a dozer, grader, skid steer, dump truck, semi. So we do a lot of servicing and maintenance on that equipment. We also have 2 different ski trail systems within the county. So we do the grooming on that. And then we also do timber sale administration. And this is kind of like the last slide with Kyle with the agronomy. We go out and we talk to the loggers and do face-to-face, just kind of make sure they're following whatever prescription we wrote up for that timber sale, and then also making sure they're not rutting up the soil, just doing anything harmful to the forest, and also staying within the boundary lines that we established so that they're not cutting beyond that onto another forest stand or onto someone else's property, which would cause a lot of issues. And then we do a lot of GIS work. So we got a GPS unit that we use to mark these boundary lines and just set up timber that way. And we also have whispers, it's called. It's a forest system that we have it programmed in our computer where it updates with what stands are within our county. So we do a lot of changes like that in the winter. Just depends on snow conditions. Otherwise, we'll be out snowshoeing or on snowmobiles, trying to do what we can. Next slide, please. just some of the recommendations for you guys. I know you're in a farm rich area, so forestry isn't at the top of the list for priorities, but getting into some sort of natural resources classes, I don't know if your school district offers them, but getting into something related to forestry or fisheries or just along those lines of natural resources. And then also getting in contact with your local DNR office. They do offer some volunteer opportunities, whether it's tree planting or even it's not forestry related, but getting in and helping with the CWD registration offices. And then there is a couple programs that the U.S. Forest Service offers in the summertime. I'm not sure if those are going on right now with COVID, but just a couple opportunities that in the summer you can get your foot in the door with that natural resources volunteering, which is very important for this field. And then it's a very simple, but I think very important thing to do if you can go to your local library or school library and get a tree identification booklet and just go out in the woods in the summer with the leaves on, try to identify trees, or in the winter with the leaves off and trying to identify trees using the bark. I think that those are some things and easy things to do. It's also good just to get outside and get familiar with walking through the forest. Like I said, you guys are in a farm rich area. I think if you don't already, working for a local farmer would be a good thing to do. You pick up a lot of maintenance skills and maybe some operating equipment skills. And it's just a hard job, and it gives you a very good work ethic because you have to work in unpleasant weather conditions that are very similar to what we have to put up with. And then this isn't as important, but if you can take the ATV, snowmobile, and boater safety classes, you can do this online. You can do it after if you were hired through a government agency, but it's just, I think, gives you a step up in the hiring process if you had that already taken by then. Some good employability skills, just like I said, being comfortable going out in inclement weather conditions. It's not always sunny and 70, working out in the snow quite a bit. I'd say about 80% of my job is out in the field doing something in the woods. So just being willing to work in those conditions. Having a positive attitude is a really big thing too. You just have to adapt and change with job responsibilities. So the day-to-day changes and just being able to adapt to that, I think, is very important. And your willingness to learn and be receptive to the job training. A lot of the skills that you do acquire and learn are on the job. You do learn quite a bit of it in school, but on the job training is most important, I believe. So just being able and your willingness to learn and being receptive to criticism, I think, is a good employability skill. And just good problem solving, because sometimes you're out in the middle of nowhere by yourself and things don't always go right. Just being able to think through whatever gets in your way, and just is another good skill to have. So yeah, that's kind of my spiel on what I do. So thank you.
Allison, do we have some questions in the chat? It looked that way.
Yep, there is one question. So when determining which trees get cut down, do you normally mark trees with a specific color, or are many colors used on different occasions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So depending on what kind of forest stand we're setting up, typically we use orange, and that is marking the trees to get cut. Otherwise, if we do a shelter wood cut, it's called, and that's usually for older growth forests, we use purple, and those are trees not to cut. And it just kind of depends on the age class of the trees, but yes, we do use different colors of paint to determine what trees are to be cut or not to cut. So.
All right. And you actually answered a question I was going to ask about, because so many of your pictures are about being out in the field, and you said you were there about 80%. So the other 20, is that doing a lot of the paperwork to keep track of what you're doing out in the field?
We have a Whispers, so it's a GIS system that we use and operate. So we do a lot of changes as far as on that system. And then also we maintain all of our equipment ourselves. So a lot of it's servicing equipment in our shop. So that's majority of the 20%, I would say, that we are always outside, it seems like, so, and not a lot of indoor time, which is fine with me if you're one that likes to be outside. So
Great.
yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. So
Yep.
we will move on to our third speaker, and that is Leanna Streckenbach, who is a veterinarian with Critter Care Animal Clinic in Sheboygan, I believe that is. So Leanna.
Hi, I did not make any slides, so
Okay.
I'm gonna have to look at
here
my
so they can
face.
see you.
All right. So yeah, I am a veterinarian here in Sheboygan at Critter Care Animal Clinic. So I only recently graduated from vet school in 2020, so I'm about 6 months into actually being a doctor of veterinary medicine. So I have pretty fresh off of the whole process. So I always kind of knew I wanted to be a vet, but I wasn't sure if it was something that I was really going to be, capable of doing. I was a little bit squeamish when I was a kid, so I wasn't sure if it was going to actually be in the cards or not. But I kind of started out, my extended family had a lot of pets, and my family had some pets as well. My grandparents were involved with the American Kennel Club, so I kind of got into dogs via them. So kind of during middle school, high school, I attended a lot of the conformation dog shows through the American Kennel Club, and kind of got into the dog world through that lens. I also was volunteering a lot at the Humane Society in Green Bay. And then I went to UW-Madison for my bachelor's degree in biology. At that point, I was a little more serious about becoming a veterinarian, and I was trying to seek out opportunities that would look good on my application. The thing about vet school is that most people do attend 4 years of undergraduate and then 4 years of vet school, and it is fairly competitive to get in. So everybody who's on that path is kind of trying to see how they can make themselves stand out from the crowd. So I was doing a lot of job shadowing. When I got to Madison, I contacted a bunch of vet clinics in the area, and one that I could get to by bus. I was there, and I spent at least 1 day a week, based on kind of what my class schedule was, just job shadowing there. I thought that was really valuable, and that's something you can do in high school as well. I know we've had some high school kids come in and job shadow here since I've been here, just because it kind of lets you get an opportunity to see, what is it actually like a day in the life in a veterinary clinic. And the more time you spend there, the more experience and exposure you get to different kinds of days in the veterinary clinic. And it kind of lets you see, whether that's something you really want to pursue or whether it's not for you. The other benefit to that is kind of the networking aspect. The connections that you make with people in the industry can help you down the line with, potential job opportunities, potential letters of recommendation, things like that. So I job shadowed there for 2 years, and then after 2 years, I got hired as the receptionist, which definitely would not have happened if they had not already, known me and I didn't already have those connections. That was not something that was easy for me because I lost my light in here. I wasn't very, polished on the phone or anything, but I got better, through practice. And that was a great skill to learn as well early on, because, a lot of people will say they want to get into veterinary medicine because they don't like people, but you deal with people all the time, either in person or on the phone. And that's a great skill to be developing early on. So I worked as a receptionist at that clinic for a year during undergrad, and then I transitioned to working as a technician assistant in the back. So helping with the doctors and the technicians and seeing appointments with them. And that was a great learning opportunity, and kind of working through that progression in a clinic was really, really helpful to me. And then just getting those hours on your application makes you kind of stand out in the way that not everybody gets that experience, in undergrad, or not everybody decides early on that they know they want to be a veterinarian, and then they're kind of scrambling to try and get an experience. So, any sort of hours that are around animals is going to look good on your application. I also did have some summer jobs in dog daycare. If you can be getting, valuable experience while also being paid, that's always a nice multitasking use of your time. So did some dog daycare, did some more volunteering at the Humane Society. If you kind of reach out to the Humane Society, they will, they have kind of different levels of volunteering, just the basic kind of dog walking. But if they know you're interested in veterinary medicine, you can volunteer in the back with the veterinarians there as well. I did some research during undergrad as well. Somebody told me that would look good on my resume. I didn't like it a lot, but I did do it. Some research with lab mice, which was interesting, but not really my thing. And then I did eventually also get a job as an undergrad at the vet school, helping set up labs for the students, which was a nice way to kind of get introduced into the school itself, and kind of meet some of the faculty there, and kind of see what the students themselves were doing. I got my degree in biology through Madison. A lot of people do biology, a lot of people do animal sciences. I also had a lot of classmates that came from really, really varying undergrad majors, education, Spanish, pre-law, that kind of decided a little later that they wanted to kind of pivot and go to veterinary medicine. So it really doesn't matter what your undergraduate major is, as long as you have the required prerequisite classes, which all the vet schools will have listed on their websites. The application process was stressful, but just because a lot of people find veterinary medicine very appealing as a concept for the career. So they have more applicants than they have spots every year. So it's not a big deal if you don't make it your first time. That happens to a lot of people. If you really know you want to go for it, keep trying. They will meet with you and let you know where your application could be stronger, and then you use that year to make it stronger. What they want to do too when they're looking at the applicants is that they want to know that you want to pursue this. They want to know you can handle the academic rigor of the courses. So they do look at grades. You don't need great grades to get into vet school, but it does help. And then they are looking at your experience and your hours, because they want to know that you want to pursue this, because what they don't want is to have people come in and then drop out because they've taken a spot from someone else who may have stayed in the program. And then during vet school, you get at Madison anyway, I can only speak for Madison, 3 years of primarily lecture-based learning with some labs sprinkled in. And then your 4th year, you are doing clinical rotations in the hospital at the vet school. And that's a lot more hands-on and kind of, your sort of dress rehearsal of being a doctor, and you do every kind of specialty, cardiology, neurology, things like that throughout the year. When you graduate with your degree, that really opens a lot of doors for you. I am a small animal veterinarian, so I see primarily dogs and cats. So kind of what most people classically think of as a veterinarian, but I do have friends that are in large animal primarily, or mixed, so both small and large. I have friends that went on to do zoo medicine. So they are working with different like major zoos across the country. I have friends that went into public health, friends that are now working for the government in kind of like meat safety, meat science, aquarium medicine. So I have some friends that went into the Army. The Army does employ veterinarians as well. So it really does kind of offer you a wide range of career opportunities after you graduate. And then I always knew I wanted to go dogs and cats. The job market for veterinarians right now is very good in that everyone is hiring. And the schools are only churning out a certain number every year of graduates. So you do kind of have the ability to pick, what you want your schedule to look like. I knew I wanted to do only dogs and cats. I knew I didn't want to be on call or do emergency. So I was able to really kind of find a job that fit well for me. So, during kind of a regular day, I kind of switch back and forth between doing either appointments all day or surgery in the morning and then appointments in the afternoon. Most of my surgeries at this point are spays and neuters on typically younger animals, or dental procedures on older. I have had some other surgeries, mass removals, tail amputations, things like that. But that's kind of a little more here and there. So my days vary wildly depending on what comes in the door. But we are doing curbside now. So the owners stay outside. We go outside and collect the patients, bring them in and start with our physical exam. Trying to see, if we can outwardly tell if anything is wrong. And then kind of move on to whether they need vaccines, whether they need any sort of diagnostics like blood work, or looking at the urine, things like x-rays, because oftentimes we do need further tests to kind of determine what is going on. And then a lot of the job ends up being communication based as well, talking to the owners. Can you, impart to them why this is important? Because everything, it's always cost versus what they need. And so communication ends up being a huge part of the day, either on the phone or in person. And then you got your paperwork at the end of the day where you have to really document everything, and make sure that everything is appropriately documented for future doctors that look at it, for the owners, and things like that. So as far as recommendations, in high school, I went to Pulaski, so not too far from you guys. We did have some veterinary specific classes that was just kind of a little bit of a window into like, what does a physical exam entail? What kind of vaccines do these animals get? And it just gives you a little bit of a window into kind of the some of the basic stuff. That's something that you can get either, through school if that's available, or through, things like job shadowing, or, doing, a job as like a kennel cleaner. A lot of veterinarians will hire high school students to come in the afternoons to help clean up after the day. And that can be a good way to kind of just get your foot in the door as well. If possible, if you can get college credits during high school, that's not a bad idea, just because it does save you money down the line. And, it can accelerate your undergrad degree and get some of those prerequisites kind of out of the way right away. And then I would just, I think it's important to, if you really have this goal of getting into vet school, there are just hoops you got to jump through. So things that you just should be on your mind would be like, if I need to get a job this summer, is there a way I can get a job that will be helping me towards that eventual goal? If not a big deal. I worked in the dining hall as well. So, like I said earlier, if you can get paid while getting your experience, that's great. But if you can't and you need to be working some other job, just be like, this is helping me with my customer service skills, which is also important. And then, in your off time, be volunteering, be shadowing, things like that. But kind of, talking to people who've already been through the process is helpful. Talking to your counselors once you get into, college and high school can be helpful, just because there's a lot of networking involved as well. So if someone knows someone who's looking for a high school kennel tech, that's going to be your foot in the door there. But otherwise, like working on your grades, trying to keep those up while you're multitasking with these other kind of extracurricular things. But they're looking for someone who is well-rounded and who can multitask. And it's not a bad idea to have things that are totally unrelated to veterinary medicine on there as well. If you are in sports, if you are in clubs, because they want to know that you can work with other people. The job is hard. We have days that are really, emotional and sad, and you know, you need to be able to lean on the people around you at your job, the other people that you're working with, and you need to be able to kind of be able to communicate with both your staff and your coworkers and the clients themselves. So they're looking for you to be able to be kind of a people person, despite the fact that, you know, your patients themselves are not people.
Well, we definitely have a number of questions, so I don't know that we'll get to all of them, but Allison, you wanted?
Sure. So the first one, what made you stand out? I think you did a good job explaining. You did I wrote them all down. You did job shadows. You were a receptionist. You were a tech assistant. You worked at the Humane Society. You did dog walking. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how you stood out.
Yeah, I tried to, you know, if I had to get a job, I tried to make it something that was going to help me. And I was trying to get, you know, job shadowing. I job shadowed a couple times in high school in Pulaski, but just here and there. I think what really helped me was kind of the sticking to the routine of doing it once a week once I got to college, because then, you know, the people there started to know me. They started to trust me.
Absolutely.
And that was, you know, that allowed me to sort of climb the ladder at that clinic and really get exposed to a lot of different like cool cases and things like that.
Great. We have a lot of questions. So I'm going to try.
Yes.
What are some job or internship opportunities with animals you can do in high school? I think you shared that with.
Yeah, the kennel cleaning is a big one because they are often looking for high school students for that. I think, you know, what someone else earlier had said, a lot of farms are willing to hire high school students as well. So if your interests lie more along the lines of large animals, that can be a good opportunity as well.
Okay. What kind of experience should we have with large animals before attending undergrad?
Okay, here's the thing about large animals. I had none. I didn't grow up with a farm background, and you have to in vet school you will learn you know, the anatomy and all the diseases and everything for cows and horses as well as dogs and cats. And when you do get to your clinical rotations, you have to take a minimum of 4 weeks in the barn, but that's all. So I didn't have any large animal experience going in, and it did not hurt my application. If you want to do large animal, they're always looking. There's a huge need for large animal vets. So if that's an interest, you can lean into that heavily. But
Sure.
it's not necessarily an entry requirement, though you will learn about it at the vet school as well.
Great. Lynn, I don't know, there's a bunch of questions. Maybe we can have Leanna answer them afterwards.
I think, yeah. And
okay, out of respect for time.
Right. I may need to go at 11, but if I would be definitely fine with you giving my email if people have questions
we'll
that
do
they'd
that.
like to reach out to me.
All right.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go back to sharing my screen so that I can introduce our last speaker, who's also in veterinary, the vet tech program with FETC, and that is Christine Clementson. So Christine, thanks for joining.
Hello. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide. This is just my little
I love that slide.
starter slide. Yeah, I know, he's so cute. So I, unlike most people who get into veterinary medicine, I did not know that I wanted to get into vet medicine specifically. I actually, for a long time, always said that I was going to be a pediatric gastroenterologist, which basically just means that is an MD that specializes in children's intestinal diseases. So I've had a passion for medicine for a long time, but as I got older, I think this picture absolutely captures me. People, no, that's not going to happen. And so I kind of went to the next best thing, and I got into veterinary medicine. So I started out as a kennel attendant or as a kennel assistant. I had zero experience in any other, clinic or animal setting outside of my own animals. And so I was lucky enough that I got hired on, goodness, I think I was 19 or 20. So I am currently a CVT with 14 years of experience. But I started out just as a kennel assistant, cleaning kennels, feeding animals, walking them, things like that. Next slide, please. I decided to go to school. I ended up going to Central New Mexico Community College. So I'm actually not from Wisconsin. I am from the Southwest. This picture is actually a beautiful picture of the Sandia Mountains in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where I lived. So this was my view when I lived in that city. I went through a 2-year program to become a certified vet tech, which is the equivalent of becoming a human registered nurse. It's a 2-year associate's degree. I ended up doing 2 semesters of prerequisite courses, your standard, English courses, composition courses, chemistry, biology. Had to take a couple of math courses because, full disclosure, I'm awful at math. Math is something that I struggled with a lot. So I ended up taking a couple of extra math classes to make sure that I was ready to get into my program. So I went through my 2-year program, graduated. Once you graduate from your vet tech program, you then sit for your national exam called the VTNE, and that just stands for Veterinary Technician National Exam. Once you take that exam, you are now licensed to practice in all of North America, including Canada. Now, the only caveat to that is that each state also has a state exam that you need to take. And that's just going to be based on the local laws and things that we need to know as veterinary technicians, things like animal health care laws, rabies bites and rabies quarantines, drug laws, controlled drugs, controlled substance laws, things like that. Next slide, please. I have done a wide variety of work throughout the veterinary field. I have done everything from general practice. I spent the majority of my career within emergency and specialty medicine. I was also in a neurology department. I spent about 2 years within a dedicated neurology department. So doing things like CTs, MRIs, different surgeries, back surgeries. I've done a couple of, well, I have not. I've been involved and have run the anesthesia for a couple of brain surgeries, which was really interesting. And then I've also done some general small animal internal medicine. So that can be anything from, difficult to regulate diabetic patients all the way through, oncology and some of our cancer patients. Next slide, please. So I really kind of run the gamut. I did most of my experience came in New Mexico. I decided to move up to Wisconsin. I'm originally from the Southwest, but my parents moved me up here when I was 16 in the middle of December, or no, I'm sorry, beginning of January. So I came from the desert to the middle of Wisconsin in January, which I still qualify as child abuse because it was so cold. I actually said to my mother that I was going to die of the cold. I'm a little prone to dramatics, but that's okay. So I ended up moving to Wisconsin. Next slide, please. And I ended up working at the Fox Valley Animal Referral Center in Appleton. I was there for, goodness, a little over 5 years, both in their emergency department and in their internal medicine department. And then I decided, you know what, I've been on the floor now for 13 years. I'm not a spring chicken, not getting any younger. My knees and my back are starting to go. It is emotionally draining. And I just thought, I think I want to teach. I think, I love training new technicians. I love putting on continuing education, presentations and things like that. And I was very, very lucky that as I was starting to have those thoughts, Fox Valley Tech started opening up their vet tech program. And so I just said, you know what? I don't have a lot of experience teaching, but I have a lot of experience in the field. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take this risk and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. What are they going to say? The worst they can say is no. And luckily they did not. So I have now been a full-time instructor at the Fox Valley Technical College. We are in our second full year now. Our first cohort will be graduating this spring. I'm so excited, more than a little emotional about it. So I won't go into too much detail about that. And I love it, love it, love it, love it. Next slide, please. I have a little bit, oh, sorry. This is just a little bit of a break and he's so cute. Go ahead, next slide, please. So days within a clinic. So what would your day look like if you were working in a veterinary clinic as a veterinary nurse or, you know, as a vet tech or technician? That's really going to vary based on the kind of practice that you're in. So you typically will have small animal practices or large animal practices. Occasionally you'll see some mixed animals, which means that they will see both small and large animals. A lot of times when you're seeing small animals, you're also seeing some exotics as well. So things like reptiles, goodness, now of course my brain is blank. Small fluffies like bunnies and guinea pigs, hamsters, birds occasionally. Then you have your general practices. Those are going to be, you know, kind of your everyday practices where you take your animals to have vaccines. That's going to be your first stop when they get sick or if they get hurt potentially. Spays and neuters and dental cleanings and all of that. Then you have your emergency practices and your specialty hospitals. A lot of times those two things are combined into one building, and those tend to be your 24-hour medical centers. And you'll have a combination of emergency doctors and different types of specialists, and also a very large technical staff. And then you can also go into academia. There's a lot of different things that you can do as a registered certified vet tech. You can go into big universities like the UW Veterinary College. You can work in their veterinary hospital, which to be honest, I've always wanted to work in a big college because they have all of the nice, fun new toys that you get to play with. You should never ever expect to have the same day twice as a vet tech, regardless of the type of practice that you work in. Every day will be a little bit different. There's a very wide range of skills and duties that we essentially perform. So we are not as specialized as human nurses. Our skill set is much more broad. And I think this picture that I chose really does a good job of it. And so you'll see a lot of things like groomers and pharmacists and radiology technicians. So we learn how to administer anesthesia, monitor anesthesia. We are drawing blood, we're placing catheters, we're running IV fluids, we're providing all of the nursing that needs to be done for these animals. You know, we are performing dental procedures, and we're also there, you know, at the end of their life with their veterinarians. You know, a lot of times we're there helping to console the family members and, you know, make sure that that animal has as peaceful a passing and as dignified of a passing as we can give them. And so, you know, the veterinarian who just spoke made a really good comment about, you know, a lot of people go into veterinary medicine because they don't like people. You will always be interacting with the general public. However, I will tell you that as a veterinary nurse, you deal more with the patients than the veterinarian does. And I know I've worked with, you know, a lot of young veterinarians throughout my time. And that, I think, far and away is the number one, you know, thing that they say is, I wish I had more animal exposure, less, you know, people exposure. I can't remember if I have another slide or not, to be totally honest with you. Education and licensing. I'll try to get through this as fast as I can, Lynn and Allison. So again, I already mentioned this. It is an applied Associates of Sciences in Veterinary Technology. There's a national and a state licensing exam that you take after you graduate. And then there are continuing education requirements. That's going to vary state by state. The state of Wisconsin requires, I believe it's 12 credit hours every 2 years. And so essentially what that means is they want to make sure that you are staying up to date with all of the medical advances and how veterinary medicine is changing. And I can tell you right now that year from year, there are massive leaps and bounds that are being gained within veterinary medicine, just like in human medicine. I think that's about it. I did leave my contact information just in case anybody had any questions about either our program or becoming a CVT. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give you when it comes to thinking about this career is try to get in and job shadow with a local clinic with a veterinary technician and research what this career is, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions. You really have to understand that becoming a vet tech is just as science and medically based as becoming a human nurse. So if medicine is not something that you're interested in, there are other things that you can do within the animal world that don't have to do with medicine.
Okay. And I think we do have a question, but I am also looking at the time. So I think what I'm going to do is after we stop the recording, I will go through and copy all of the questions that we had for veterinarian and then send those to Leanna and Christine. So if you've got some insight into those questions, I can then send those on to students. And then we also have your contact information in the slide deck. So that will be helpful as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. Again, just previewing that next week, we're still on Ag, Food, and Natural Resources. And along with your registration this morning, I did send a survey link. So we would love to hear from you. So please give us some feedback on our job spotlight. So I'm going to stop the recording and thank all of our guests one more time.